Just getting ready to hit the road. I'm going to go to the gym right now. And I wanted to cover a little bit more about what's going on because last night I was able to cover quite a bit and sort of give you my perspective of, in particular, the bunker buster attack on the Fordo site. Sorry I look a little bit haggardly. I haven't been able to shave today. Didn't want to shave, to be honest. But I'm going to go train legs, fully armed and stacked, just in case one of these sleeper cells decides to get crazy with me. I'm ready to go. And welcome to my show. I'm attorney Michael Ehline. I am a lawyer licensed in California and Texas. I primarily do catastrophic injury dad who get in motorcycle and car accidents. But I'm also an inactive U.S. Marine, and I've stayed heavily involved in geopolitics over the last 30 or 40 years of my life. And I'm also a military historian. And so I wanted to bring some context to what's going on with these attacks. Good seeing you guys. Good seeing you, Dad. Good seeing you, Our Guy96. Good seeing you, Simba B. And if any of you guys were able to join me last night, I appreciate it. I appreciate all the love and the super chats and the memberships you guys are doing, because it'll help me make my exit from being a full-time lawyer and being able to do more podcasting, which is, I think, what I really like doing, to be honest. I think it's really cool. And making a lot of cool friends. I'm a blue-collar guy. My background is in construction, and I became a lawyer on the law study program for a lot of reasons. One, because I got attacked by a corrupt cop over a parking ticket and ended up getting falsely charged and ended up winning that case and suing him and getting like 30 grand back in like 2006. And then the other reason is the contract law issues with my construction company, always dealing with shysters trying to get out of paying my bill and making contractor state licensing board claims, and me having to become a paralegal just to deal with that. And I realized, you know what, man, the only way that you can make it in this world is if you're a lawyer. If you're not a lawyer, you're going to get screwed. And even as a lawyer, you get screwed. Give me a bunch of ones if you understand what I'm saying. So let's get into the meat of it, because I'm headed to the gym. Okay, so the first thing that I wanted to talk about is, so in America, especially my generation, especially Marines and service members, when we shake your hand and we look you in the eye and we agree to do something, to us, that's a contract. But in the Iranian culture, they have two things that they rely on to get out of keeping their promises. And to them, it's normal, and to us, it's a disgrace. And that's why a lot of my clients who had hired people that are first-generation Iranians who are lawyers fired those lawyers because they felt that they were deceived, and they hire me, and they just trash talk these guys. Well, I saw this guy, Farhaj Kababian or whatever, on all over the website, and he seemed like a great lawyer, and I hired him, and he was like, oh, my friend, you're my good friend, I do whatever. And then they never returned my phone calls. They tried to screw me out of my settlement, and I hear this over and over and over again. So I asked one of my buddies, who's a second-generation Iranian, because remember, I grew up with a lot of Iranians back in the 80s because of them fleeing the Ayatollahs and having their whole families massacred, like, you know, having their dad's head put in a vice grip with popping their eyes out and all that. So those people are bad news. But anyways, what I was told is it's mainly this Persian tradition called the Tarov, which is this cultural niceties where you act like you want something if you don't, and you promise somebody something even though you don't mean it, to maintain an advantage. And from what my understanding is, the Tarov goes back all the way, I think his name is it Derses? What was that king? I'll remember it in a minute. I do that a lot with my hard drive, guys. I'm getting a little bit older. Darius, King Darius. So, and it also goes back to when the Greeks invaded and took over Iran, that to save face, people would rather lie or be deceptive. But see, in the Iranian culture, the Tarov doesn't consider it to be lying. It's considered normal. So my buddy David, he's also Jewish, but he's also Iranian, said, that's why they had to flee, said that the way it works over there is when you go to a street merchant and you want to buy something, the street merchant will say, You'll say, how much do you want? And it'll be like, $200, piston, or whatever that word is that they use. And then you say, no, $50 piston, right? And you negotiate back and forth. If you accept the first demand of $100, you're considered to be an idiot, and people will make fun of you. It's like it's considered a disgrace to accept the first offer. Whereas with us in America, with our English common law tradition and the biblical principles of let your yes be your yes and your no be your no, we're like, well, wait a minute. You know, why are we bartering? If you've got a set price on a thing of milk at the grocery store, you don't go and barter with the manager. But there are some crossovers. When you go to buy a car, you never accept the first offer. So you got to put things in context. Now, for me, I did make the mistake of dealing with some first-generation Persians in my law practice, and they owe me about $500,000 in referral fees. So I'm definitely hand shy when it comes to doing business with someone from that particular culture. So that's just my personal experience. But a lot of my friends who are like third, fourth, fifth American generation Jewish people who are not Persian say don't ever do business with Persians or Iranians because they'll screw you every time. And these are Jewish guys saying don't do with Jewish Persians, Jewish Americans saying don't do business with Jewish Persians. So even within the Jewish community, there's a rift between the Persian Jews. They call them Beverly Hills Jews because they have pink houses. I don't know, it's crazy. There's like this whole under subculture that you won't hear about on Grok or the internet. But anyways, it's just kind of funny, you'd think, well, you're Jewish, so you all have to be aligned. No, that's not true at all. Definitely the Ashkenazi Jews don't get along with the Persian Jews, at least not behind closed doors, right? So I just wanted to give you a little bit of a because I'm a lawyer, so I wanted to lay a foundation for what's going on. So back in 2018, the United States, Iran basically closed down most of the nuclear facilities to IAEA, International Atomic Energy Commission, or something like that, inspections. And of course, the commie Dems over here say, "Oh, it's Trump's fault. Oh, Trump this, Trump that." I mean, these guys have a prostate problem. It's Trump's fault, right? So take it with a grain of salt. There were 3 main underground bunkers where the Iranians were enriching uranium. And of course, our position as Americans, as well as I think Israel's position, is that why do they need to enrich uranium? They've got one of the biggest oil fields on the planet. They definitely have enough fuel. So that's pretty. Hey, what's going on, guys? Right stuff. Simba B, thanks for joining me, man. I appreciate it, guys. Sorry about that. Little congested today. So yesterday, again, we talked about these bunker buster bombs. And then, of course, it turns out, so this is what I wanted to, number one, tell you. Number one, do you really think that those 3 nuclear installations are the only ones Iran had? Especially with their history of the Taraf, and the other one is called the Taqiyya. So the Taqiyya is another tradition of cultural excused lying to non-Shia Muslims. So the Iranians, being only, I think, 20% of the Muslim community over in Eastern Asia or Western Asia, wherever they are, in the Muslim community, they're the minority, they're the Shiites. And I think they believe that Ali was the true leader of Islam after Muhammad died. And then the Sunnis have another one that they think should be the boss. So Ali's offsprung the Shia. And I just know this because I grew up with Persian buddies. So when I say this, that, they have a culture of lying, I know this from hearing this from my own friends who are Iranian, all right? So, again, the Taraf is the Iranian tradition of lying as a form of deceit to save face. And you can look that up. It's called the Taraf, like Makarov, right? If you're into handguns. And the Taqiyya is culturally accepted it's similar to the Jewish Babylonian Bible that they have, where it's okay to lie to a goyim, but this is the Muslim version of it's okay to lie to a non-Muslim. And it's perfectly acceptable to lie to a non-Muslim. It's called the taqiyya. And so in that tradition, because the Shia have been a minority throughout the Eastern world, the Muslim world, when they were invaded by Sunnis and forced to convert or have their whole family massacred, they would engage in what's called the taqiyya, so they could remain Shia. So their oaths never had any valid effect. So to them, it's just become hundreds and maybe thousands of years of tradition that it's okay to lie, to protect your family, to protect yourself. And even under Alexander the Great, same thing. It's okay to lie, to protect your fortune. Don't tell them where your gold is, right? So, but taqiyya is more the Muslim tradition. The Taraf is the Iranian tradition. And so don't get them twisted. They both are pretty much mean the same thing. So they're ingrained in that culture is a history of being dishonest by Western standards. But again, I told you earlier, they think if you accept the first offer in a sale, you're an idiot, and it's a disgrace, because they're a culture of bargaining, and they're a culture of expecting and assuming that the person that you spoke with who gave you their word wasn't telling the truth. So it's just a different culture altogether. And that's another reason why I talk about, why would you want to have open borders and invite all these different people into your country when they haven't accepted our cultural value system? Because what does that do? It definitely makes for bad business deals, guys. People know when they shake my hand and I give them their word, that means that I'm willing to die on that hill. It's not about trying to get your business. That's why mostly veterans hire me, because they know that I'm deadly serious. When I give you my word and I shake your hand and I almost break it because I have that firm handshake like a old school construction worker, that means that we have a bond in blood. But that's different with some of these other cultures. So the taqiyya is another thing that they rely on. And because the IAEA and because Europeans, well, at least when they signed these agreements, weren't Muslim. I think Europe is pretty much now like the Islamic Republic of Europe, but before it wasn't. It was okay to lie to all these people. And if there were Sunni Muslims, it was okay to lie to them too. So here's the point that I'm trying to make. Number one, do you guys really think for a second that those were the only 3 enrichment sites that Iran had? I highly doubt it, number one. I think that the IAEA was inspecting basically red herrings. They probably were just like a joke. Like they put them out there because they knew that they would be targeted someday. So why on earth would they disclose all of their nuclear enrichment programs when they have a culture that says it's okay to lie? So that's something I just wanted to throw out there at you. Give me a bunch of ones if you're following me so far, guys. I can't see yet everything, but got all these cars blasting by me going like 60. Just waiting to go ahead and help the state of Nevada raise some revenue, right? And I'm going the speed limit, of course. Anyways, so number one, do you really think that those were the only 3 nuclear enrichment sites? All right, I don't. In fact, here's the other issue. We know that at least one of those nuclear enrichment sites, at least one of them, they had, I think, 17 or 18 large trucks 2 days before we bombed them, pulling up to the entrance of that site and driving away. Does this sound familiar? Kind of like the weapons of mass destruction issue back with Bush 1, or maybe it was Bush 2, Bush Gulf War 2, where large trucks were pulling up to the chemical dumps in Iraq and driving into Syria. Okay, so to me it's reminiscent of that. I mean, I think Iran knew we were getting ready to go and bomb them. I think China probably had given them enough logistical data to know that the U.S. would be bombing them. And of course, we know that China has farmland next to all of our military bases now, so they can monitor the B-2 flights, they can monitor the aerial refuel tanker flights, and they could probably pretty much pinpoint the Chinese, because the Democrats and the rhinos have allowed them to buy U.S. farmland so they can monitor our military installations. Probably the Chinese told them, look, expect an attack within 2 days. This is my thought on this. And give me a bunch of ones if you agree. So what do? they go and they pull out all their nuclear material. They take big trucks, they go up, they pull it out. 2 days later, we hit it. Now, I'm assuming that our satellites could track that, but we also know from watching Tom Clancy movies that our enemies know how to track U.S. spy satellites. So there's a high probability that even if they did drive off with that nuclear material, they could have waited until our spy satellites were out of the way and they were in the clear and moved that nuclear material somewhere else. So on my mind, I think that even if we did penetrate those bunkers, that nuclear material is gone. And because the Iranian culture of the Taraf and the Takia say it's okay to lie to people that are your adversary, even your friends actually under the Taraf, that all of that stuff about those being the only 3 enrichment bunkers and all that is probably total bullshit. They probably have plenty of other places. And we know the North Koreans would have no problem giving them a nuke, right? The Iranians help the North Koreans with their nukes and vice versa. So don't think for a minute that we're not going to have to send in troops. That's the point that I was trying to make. Now, I'm almost to the gym, so I wanted to share something with you. Because of these attacks, my prediction, look at the Bitcoin price. It was at 106,000, I believe, on Friday. Now Bitcoin's down, I think it's almost down to 99,000 this morning. So after these attacks, digital currencies crashed. I think the only safe havens that you're going to have right now is going to be gold and silver. If you have money in MSTU or MSTY, probably a good idea to exercise your stop losses. Now, what would I do? Again, I'm not giving you financial or legal advice, but what would I do? What am I going to do? Once the UVIX spikes up to around 60, which I think it probably will, I think there's a high probability that UVIX, which is a 2-time leverage ETF that leverages itself on the fear and greed index, is probably going to hit around $60 to $120 tomorrow. And when that happens, the SVIX, which is the reverse, it goes up when the economy is good. The SVIX is going to go down. And I believe that's a 1 or 2-time leveraged ETF as well. Maybe it's only 1-time leverage. So my thought is I'm going to buy as much SVIX or do some call options on SVIX, probably have them expire in August. Because if the economy starts to improve, the SVIX prices will go up and I'll be able to sell that and probably make a boatload of money. So just like Rahm Emanuel said, never let a crisis go to waste. These idiots that are getting us in these wars, there's no reason why you can't do the same thing they do, which is maybe benefit a little bit from it. Hey, Gloria, good seeing you. So my thought is, and thank you everybody for joining me. I'm attorney Michael Ehline. I'm an attorney licensed in California and Texas. So number one, I do not believe for a second that we were able to take out any of that nuclear material. I believe that the Iranians already pulled it out. I believe that under the principles of the Taraf and the Takia and Iranian culture, which is a culture of culturally accepted lying, that the IAEA never even had access to all their nuclear material to begin with. And I believe if there was any nuclear material in any of those underground bunkers, the Iranians have already moved it at least 2 days prior to these bunker buster attacks and pulled it out of the country. So it's over, guys. The only way we're going to stop the Iranians now, and by the way, with Sleepy Joe's wide open borders, where he allowed at least 20 million people just to walk across our border when we had a sealed border under Trump with his executive order that they shelter in place and they seek legal entry at the port of entry, and we vet people before we allow them to come into our country from cultures that could be hostile to us. When Sleepy Joe set that executive order aside, what he did is he made it possible for the Iranians and our enemies to flood our country with nuclear material, dirty bombs, and sleeper cells. We know that a lot of Chinese nationals flooded into our country of military age. They could very well be targeting our power grid, and they are aligned with the Iranians and the Russians. Don't think for a second that they're not going to start launching attacks within the United States. So again, my advice, if I was going to give you advice, my advice to myself is I'm going to try to buy as much UVIX as I can if it's under 29 tomorrow. And if not, I'm going to start buying SVIX once the UVIX hits around 60. and I'm going to probably do some call options on both of them. I might even short SVIX. That might be the way to go. Maybe do some shorts on SVIX. And so that would be, if you guys don't know about how to do any of that stuff, it's time to learn. So if anybody has any questions on that, I'll have a stock market expert guy come on my show and teach you guys how that's done. But I've been able to leverage a lot of this stuff by looking at geopolitics. And I know they're high risk, but they're high reward as well. I think when the Dems tried to assassinate Trump this last time, the UVIX went up to around $200 a share. So imagine if I had had a couple of thousand shares of UVIX that I'd paid 25 for, I could have made like $1 million on that. So that's something that you want to think about. Hey, Monk, good seeing you. UVIX, Patrick Kelly. It's what you want to do is you want to Google, or I don't even want to say Google because I hate these guys because they're basically allies with our Chinese communist enemies. But I would say look it up on Grok or something. UVIX is basically its position to the VIX, the Fear and Greed Index. And what it does is it leverages against the fear index. So when fear is high in the market, stocks drop and people lose everything, right? Unless you did stop losses on all of your investments, you're going to lose everything when there's a war. So that's all you always want to do, your stop loss. And so it's based what's called the Fear and Greed Index. So it leverages against when the markets fail, the VIX goes up. When the markets are bullish, the VIX goes down. So when the greed index goes up, the price of the VIX goes down. When the fear index goes up, the price of the VIX goes up. And so the SVIX, which is the reverse of that, SVIX, it goes way down when the markets are doing bad, when there's fear in the market. So what I try to do is I try to leverage both. And I always try to have a little bit on hand, like an insurance policy in case, in this case, my MSTY, I've already lost about 50,000. I'm not even going to do a stop loss on it because I think that Bitcoin's going to come back. But there's a huge market sell-off right now in Bitcoin. And so I would take a look at the Fear and Greed Index. I would watch some YouTube videos and learn about SVIX and UVIX and learn about covered calls, learn about short selling. Because now would be a time during a time of war where you might be able to make a little bit of cash to be able to set it aside for your family. And obviously, this is only if you have some expendable income. I'm not suggesting you take your fortune and do that. I agree with you, Monk. You're more than welcome, Patrick. But anyways, I think that I didn't know that about DuckDuckGo, but that's interesting. And no, what's the matter, you? You thought that was real? That's your motive right there. Oh yeah, absolutely. You don't think that all the politicians probably bought a shitload of VIX before this happened? Of course they did. Especially the guys on the security committee or whatever it's called. I'm sure that Trump probably bought millions of dollars in options, or his family, on UVIX before this went down. And so with an option, one option is equal to 100 shares. So imagine, if you bought like 30 options, what, 30,000 shares? I mean, and anyways, I don't want to get into it too much because I want to go work out, guys. But here is my prediction. Number one, all those bunker buster bombs, the only people who made money were shareholders of the military-industrial complex. And I'm 99% certain that the Iranians had already pulled out all their nuclear material, if they had any there at all. The International Atomic Energy Inspections, I think because of the Takia and the Tarof, which is the culture in Iran that allows them to lie. It's acceptable and culturally normal to lie in that country. Again, which is why a lot of my clients who had hired Persian lawyers fire them because they felt like they were lied to. And I'm like, no, it's not the case. It's just their culture. If you're going to hire someone that's a first-gener from that society, you probably should learn a little bit about their culture because it's normal to lie. It's acceptable. Whereas here in the United States, it's considered a disgrace. So it's just a different cultural philosophy. So I believe that probably those nuclear sites that the IAEA was inspecting were just red herrings. They were not they were not the real areas where Iran was enriching their uranium, at least not in whole. They were just like little tiny little specks on the radar that the Iranians could write off in time of war. Now there was one plant in particular, gosh, I can't remember the name, Torof or Toro, gosh, I can't even remember it. But anyways, there were at least 18 trucks that showed up to that location 2 days before we started bombing Iran, and they were obviously driving away with nuclear material. So I would say that there's a high probability. There is a high probability. Hey, Dave's channel, you're welcome, brother. Well, Diano, Reno, it's not culturally okay to lie here, at least not with military vets like me. If you lie to me, I'll never do business with you again. And my clients know that when they shake my hand, that I'm going to keep my word. And there's a lot of cases where even if my client felt like they were disrespected or lied to, I just waived my fee to try and save face. So it's a different philosophy altogether. I would rather not take any money than have my reputation placed at risk. I don't want to have a reputation for being dishonest. That's definitely not in my wheelhouse, brother or sister, whoever you are. But in any way, well, you're right. The right stuff, you're right. Cops are allowed to lie in certain situations. And the problem is, once you lie lying in one aspect of your culture, it's okay to lie in all aspects. And that's why it's really important to be an honest and upright, forthright person. But with that being said, I hope you learned a little bit about the Iranian culture of the Tarof and the Taqiyya, which is the Islamic version of it's okay to lie to a non-Muslim, and why I believe that none of those bombs did anything to affect Iran's infrastructure with respect to nuclear bomb-making capabilities. And if anything, it just kicked a hornet's nest, and that this real war is really about the United States Federal Reserve Bank, the CIA, and Israel trying to make sure that the dollar remains the world's reserve currency. And they're attacking the BRICS countries, Russia and Iran, and ultimately probably China. They're going to have to, because the BRICS countries are going back to a gold and silver based currency, which is what the United States is supposed to be based upon, which is what our country is supposed to be backed by commodities of intrinsic value, not fiat currency, guys. Our founding fathers never wanted us to enter into the Jekyll Island fraud that forced us into a federal income tax. There's, in my opinion, under our Bill of Rights, our property rights disallow, under the Fourth Amendment, the government from knowing how much money we make. Give me a bunch of ones if you agree that the federal income tax should be abolished, as well as the Federal Reserve fiat currency system. And that's why I am a proponent of buying as much physical gold, silver, and digital currencies that you can get your hands on. Now, because Bitcoin has dropped so much these last few days, I'm going to buy as much Bitcoin as I can get my hands on. Because ultimately, at some point, if the war's not over, it's because we're dead. But once the war is over, once we put boots on the ground and invade Iran, and that's coming, because I guarantee you that we did not take out any of their nuclear bomb production capabilities. Those 3 facilities were basically there as straw men, and any fissile material that was there was taken out at least 2 days in advance. The only way we're going to be able to stop them is to send in boots on the ground. Give me a bunch of ones if you agree. Other crypto too, that's right. XRP, and what's the other one that I bought a shitload of? Oh gosh, I can't remember, but I bought Ethernet. I bought a bunch of Ether as well. So Ether's another one I would look at. Always buy at the dip. If you've got expendable income, man, get your hands on as much of that as you can. We see that Bitcoin is never going down. It will hit a level, and then it will stabilize and will pop back up. So remember, Bitcoin started at what, 50 cents, and now it's selling for right now today around 99 to 100,000 a coin. And so what happens is it reaches a certain level, and then it pops off from that, and it just keeps going up. Now, this war has given you guys an opportunity to get in while you can, and you don't have to buy a full coin. I mean, I've got, in one of my accounts, I have like $30,000 worth of Bitcoin that I think I picked up at 80,000. So when it went up to 106,000, it went up, it goes up huge. So you could buy like 0.10, and in probably a couple of years, if it goes up to 200 or $1 million a coin, you guys might have some decent retirement assets to look to. So let's yeah, I know, Billy Bad. Everything's always Trump's fault, blah blah blah. I get it, man. The libtards are, it's a faith-based cult. These are people who think that men can get pregnant and that they need tampon machines in the men's restroom. So it's a cult. They're like the Scientologists. They're too far gone. Don't waste your time with them. But you people who are capable of critical thinking, I'm hoping that I was able to give you some decent gold back. That's right. Well, I think that we should be using gold. What's the matter, you? But in any event, I don't want to get too far off the beaten path, guys. I got to work out. I got to train. I got to get some stretching in. I'll try to go live later today. I've got to work on some katagames with my son, and I've got to go buy some more ammo and pick up some more MREs and some non-perishable goods. I recommend that you do the same thing. I say there is a high statistical probability that there are Iranian sleeper cells who are going to work with the communist Chinese nationals who snuck across our border under Sleepy Joe to start wreaking havoc on our power grid. So if you don't have a gas generator, buy a gas generator and buy some freaking gas, guys. And if you have the extra income, you might want to consider one of those little portable solar panels to power your ham radio or an AM radio so you can hear, because obviously if our power grid goes down, that's the only way you're going to have access to any information. We won't have internet access or cell phone access. So we're going to be paralyzed. But don't think for a minute that this is over. And don't think for a minute that we're not going to have to send in ground troops into Iran. And I think that was the game. The military-industrial complex wanted that. And more, I'm thinking that Trump probably is not much better than any of our other presidents. I hate to say that. I was really hoping that he was going to keep us out of wars. Now, on the upside, look, I'm no friend of Iran. Anybody who says death to America should have been taken out a long time ago. These people are an existential threat to our way of life and our country. So in my opinion is, anybody who says death to America, they're threatening you and me, and they need to be dealt with. They should have been dealt with a long time ago. And now, because they've been able to build up infrastructure and this BRICS currency alliance, only now do these banksters and globalists want to take them out. So that really has me pissed. So anyways, guys, with that being said, make sure to like and subscribe. Make sure to save, because we never know when the thought police are going to take down this channel. Semper Fi, do or die. Love you guys. Take care.